Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.
Well, when it's time to talk about voice, we know that there are folks out there that already have providers of some kind, and we wanted to go to Eric Leon, our VP of Sales. Welcome back, Eric.
Good to be here.
We had to get Eric in here to talk about, voice providers. What about adding new ones? Why would you do that? Also talk about redundancy and, disaster recovery. So why don't we start with that, Eric? The question is, we know there's a lot of people out there that already have a provider, and I think there's sort of a consensus about what a provider is for our customers, and they kind of come to it with a set of expectations, and then a lot of times those expectations are kind of met in terms of maybe they don't have as much control as they know they could really have, maybe support isn't up to scratch. So let's say you have an application, a platform, a contact center, you already have a provider. Why would you want to add a new one or change up?
Yeah, happy to answer that question, but I'll tell a little bit of a story first.
Great.
That I think might shed some light on why I'm answering the way I answer. So we spend a lot of time with people who are interconnecting to carriers who've done it for 30 plus years, who've done it for 1 year, and we learn a lot from our customers and our prospects and things like that. And so one thing that has always jumped out to me is when you really dig in deep with somebody, they often surprise you as to why they're using who they're using and why they're not using somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's as simple an answer as in, they just make our life easier, right? I don't care about saving a few extra bucks here or there. They just make our life easier. Some have perceptions of they were I use this person because I used to use this other company and they were good for a while and now they're no longer good. So I switched over to this company and they bounce around town. So I think I illustrate that because I think everybody is unique in what they define a good quality provider of voice and messaging services is. And each partner is going to have some unique requirements. But the one thing that's universal among all of them is they've uncovered that for individual carriers of voice and messaging, no one provider of the service is good all the time or good everywhere, right? And that is ever changing and evolving over time. So, your original question was what, Tim?
Well, you already have a provider, like you mentioned, and that, whether you have one or maybe even two, that, they're not good every place all the time. So why would you want to add or change gears, to go to a different provider? Yeah, exactly.
So, the key to it is what's going to bring the most value to you and your customer base and your customer experience. And so, when people are out there looking for new providers, they're oftentimes trying to improve the support. They're oftentimes trying to improve the features that come along with what they have, the consistency in there. They're often trying to improve, coverage into areas that, they may have had less than desirable experience with their current provider. They're oftentimes trying to improve the cost structure. They're trying to achieve those economies of scale as they're growing. Maybe their provider isn't necessarily scaling from a cost perspective in the same way.
Right. Exactly.
And redundancy, I should say.
Yeah, well, speaking of redundancy, let's dovetail into that. So,
Sure.
I think most folks who have been in the industry long enough understand the concept of outbound redundancy. So, if you add a number of providers into, your sort of outgoing call flow, you can switch gears, if one of them has an issue, would love for you to kind of, chat a little bit about what that is and how that works today, but also this notion of inbound redundancy, which you and I were, at a show recently, and somebody literally said, that's impossible. Inbound redundancy is impossible. So let's set the record straight and let's sort of compare the two.
Yeah. Your old telecom provider has ruined you. because they've convinced you to accept certain levels of risk that you no longer have to accept.
Mm.
You brought up redundancy on inbound services, and it's a complicated subject because vendors like to talk about redundancy in unique ways to make their products sound good. But at the end of the day, what does redundancy really mean? It means if something goes wrong, do you have the option to restore the services immediately? Or are you subject to moving your numbers to another provider over, say, a few days or a week that it would take to do that?
Yeah.
Why is it important? Well, there isn't that many huge networks out there. And a few of the big ones over the past couple of years have had major outages related to their services. This means people for their mission critical services weren't getting calls, businesses were affected, revenues were down, customers were migrating around trying to figure out how to prevent this from happening. And the talk track has always been, it's just the way it is. We do lots of things, companies will say we do lots of things to sort of, mitigate this risk. But at the end of the day, if somebody cuts a fiber line, a telephone pole goes down, a hurricane event happens, a routing table changes, any of these kinds of things, you're just, you got to count on us to be good about that and restore the services for you. What Commio is trying to educate people on is there's a better way of doing this, right? So you can think of it like roads on a map. Every town, most towns, have multiple different roads in order to get into that town. If one road shuts down, they don't just simply say, okay, just come back another day. They say, here's how you reroute it and you get around, over here. We are the first to bring that to inbound services. So in the event, I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. In the event that a location goes down and there's more than one road into there, which covers about 87% of US locations, we have the ability to just simply reroute that call through a new pathway in order to get into that town. That is not a service that is offered by any competitor today. And this really protects those mission critical services. Long answer, but that's kind of the explanation.
Yeah. I think, we've had instances where, call centers, for instance, their phones stop ringing because their inbound service, there's been a fiber cut. And instead of sending a ticket, blowing up the phones, waiting a day, as you said, up to a week, and then you've lost all that time and revenue. With Commio, we can literally, hit a button and switch. As you said, 87% of the US is covered. And then the phones start ringing again in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of it. Now, admittedly, these things should be rare. I mean, this shouldn't be regular occurrence that you need to activate, restoration services. It's the kind of thing, you don't need it until it happens. And when you do, it's the most critical and important thing to have, right? But outside of the obvious ones that happen the most, like fiber lines getting cut, telephone poles going down, overcapacity into a location, things like that can occur on these primary networks in the United States. It can be simple things like, for example, let's not name and shame any providers here, but there was a mobile operator that if any of their cell phone subscribers tried to call a particular location, they just stopped it. They updated the routing table incorrectly, and you essentially could not call that location, on a specific underlying network. So it's one network was no longer able to communicate to another network. And, that was impacting businesses significantly, right? That particular customer on our platform knew it was happening immediately. They were able to use the disaster recovery to just swap out who the receiving end was on that thing and instantly get all of those calls from the mobile operator into that call center. That is not something you could do on another provider.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to know. And I'm glad we keep spreading the word because it's a mission critical for a lot of our folks. And by the way, let's go back to disaster recovery as well. If you would ask the question, how many carriers do you really need to have a good disaster recovery solution, right? And is there a reason to want more?
Yeah. Again, I'm not trying to spread fear here, but I think, the mentality was, if I have more than one, I've got some pretty good coverage. And the answer is you're actually doing pretty well. Like the minute you get more than one, you're doing much better than you were when you had a single provider. The biggest risk ever is having a single connected solution. So let's say you're connected to a CPaaS provider, something like that. You put yourself at a lot of risk because you have one point that you're connected to that can get you to your end destination. The minute you have two, you've significantly reduced the number of times that you're going to have end user customer downtime, significantly. But I think the thing that people overlook is they said, if I have two, three might be better. Once I get to a third, they think I'm kind of done. But one of the biggest challenges in the telephone networks across America is, sometimes multiple providers have similar pathways into the destination. And when they do, if that pathway has a problem, then all of those providers have a problem. So one of the biggest calls that we get, or one of the most numerous types of customer experience types that we get, is a customer says, hey, I've got, these five, and these are the five most well-known, providers out there in the marketplace, but I still have problem getting into a particular location sometimes. Usually happens during a weekday at peak calling times. They become unreliable. And that's why we sort of educate them on you really need to start thinking about getting closer to like 13 providers before you have what's really truly, redundancy into every location and unique pathways into every single location. I hate to keep giving our product a plug here, but that's essentially what our platform aims to do. Instead of creating a one carrier solution, we actually directly connect you to over 40 carriers. That means you don't have to go down and hunt down 13 plus providers in order to feel protected. You instantly get access to 40. So you have up to 40 redundant points into every location, giving you the most comprehensive, automatic disaster recovery built into your platform.
Very well said, Eric. I think we summarized it well. Whether you're on Twilio or any other CPaaS, what to look for in another provider. We've covered that. It's not just about saving money. It's about getting access to some of these tools, including things like inbound redundancy, which only Commio offers.
Yep.
And you want to have 13 or more? Why not have 40 carriers to power your disaster recovery? All covered very well.
Exactly.
So that's great, Eric. Hey, I hope you're having a great summer. I appreciate your input here on the voice side of the webinar, and we'll be coming back in our third part as well with some additional questions. But I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule, Eric, and chatting with us today. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Well, when it comes to the voice component of your application or the service you're providing, your contact center, there's something, it's at the core of all of those things, and that's phone numbers. And we don't give a lot of thought to these things that in the industry we call DIDs, but they're actually just phone numbers. And I thought that as we're talking about the future of voice during this piece together today, I wanted to bring in Sam Schiffman, who's our chief strategist. Sam, welcome back in.
Thank you.
And just to kind of bring everybody up to speed on some of the basics of numbers and also, what to look for when you're considering changing your provider or bringing a provider on when it comes to phone numbers. So Sam, why don't we start with this, which I don't think a lot of people know, which is where do the phone numbers come from in the first place? You're the guy who got us to our 10 million mark, right, on our inventory. So where do you go to get numbers?
Well, there's a short answer. Which I haven't been known for, but it's the North American Numbering Plan Administrator.
Okay.
The long answer of that is that so I guess to talk about the future, we're going to talk about the history first.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that, phone numbers were initially introduced back in 1879? So they've been around for a little bit. They started off as like 1 to 3 digits in length, and with the idea of the switchboard operators, you didn't need to know the name of the number you were calling, or I guess it wasn't a number at the time. So that allowed them to be a little more rapid with that. So I'm guessing. Let's see if phone numbers were generated in 1879, even 1 to 3 digits, then probably directly thereafter, unsolicited calls started happening.
Yes.
Yep. Trying to sell a horse or a buggy or something, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Then back in 1947 or so, AT&T developed the North American numbering plan, not the administrator, just basically to come up with an idea of, well, how do we make direct long distance dialing? That got implemented back in 1951, where the first area code was released. They had a whole map of where they were going to do it, but the first one was 201 in New Jersey. So extra credit. Guess where Bell Labs is located?
Yeah.
Might be in the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
But the real reason behind that was, at the time, New Jersey was the most populous state in the area, and the area code carried the whole area. Fast forward quite a bit. There was the Telecom Act of 1996, which meant that there was a competitive landscape for numbers, and now not only AT&T and all the bells had access to the numbers at CLEX, and so now there needed to be a group that administered those, and so that was how the North American Numbering Plan Administrator was born.
Got it. So who's on this board, right? Who are these people? Is this a magical computer?
No, it is they're sort of a quasi-governmental entity. They don't make regulations, but they take the regulations and try to facilitate number allocation resources across the board. So, and if you take from the Telecom Act of 96 and you fast forward 20 years, the FCC opened up the doors to what type of providers could also, other type of providers, namely VoIP providers that could gain access to numbers.
That's right.
So that was what, February of 2016, August of 2016, Commio received its authorization from the FCC to begin getting numbering resources directly from NAMPA.
Got it.
So kind of a first mover in that space. I think we filed directly after AT&T.
Wow.
So it was early on, and so that was short answer, NAMPA.
Got it.
They deal with administering numbers out to them and do code overlays. So when you get a new area code, because you run out of numbers in that particular area code, they're the ones that sort of deal with all those. They're sort of industry bodies that also meet to help sort of guide and come up with new policies. So
got it. So I think the short answer is, really, if we bring us really up to date, is that Commio is getting numbers the same way that AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile,
any of those folks.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, in significant quantities, because I know we get customers all the time. We say, you know what, I need 1,000 numbers in this location, and you look at our inventory. Again, we have 10 million numbers that we have under our umbrella. If we don't have enough, you can go get 1,000 numbers direct.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And we have done special projects for customers where they have a need for a large number of numbers, or numbers in a specific area or rate center, or if there are still numbers available in a particular area code, we have access to get those directly for our customers.
Right.
Now,
it sounds like, so we've been talking about domestic, 10-digit phone numbers here. So I know there's a couple different types. So the other type really out there is toll free, right? And where do those come from?
Well, those come from Somos, which is a group that handles the sort of in the same sort of sense, but they deal with dealing with the phone numbers in the toll-free world.
Right.
But even outside of that, we've got toll-free numbers. There are non-geographic 5XX numbers, so numbers that start with area code of 5XX. They aren't actually assigned to a particular geographical area, and largely used for internal applications and messaging applications too as well. So there's toll free, there's sort of the local 10-digit numbers we're all used to seeing. There are, and inside of those, they break out into mobile numbers, they break out into VoIP numbers, they break out into wireline numbers.
Yeah.
So
everybody thought this was simple. It's not quite as simple.
In true telecom fashion, underneath the covers, it's all very convoluted.
Yeah,
But
it's a lot of
somehow it's amazing to me that it works. It's sort of like the internet. Is there's so many complicated things underneath it. It's amazing every day that it just comes along.
yeah, yeah, very interesting. And let's go back to that. I know we're all super proud here that we reached that 10 million number. But why is having a large inventory important to somebody who's, looking to work with a provider?
Yeah, so having it's not just depth but breadth as well. So it needs to be a wide and deep river, because just having a lot of numbers in one particular place could potentially be useful for very isolated cases. But in our particular case, we've spread out across the nation and have numbering resources, and just across the U.S.
Uh-huh.
Um, so having that large inventory allows to meet those needs directly. So customers can come in either via our APIs or our portal and be able to access that inventory directly, be able to do searches on it, so they can look and it's like, hey, do you have something in this particular area code that meets my need, or this particular MPA, or this NXX, or in this rate center, or in this state. So it gives them the ability to sort of do searches on that complete inventory. Now, what I'd say is that when we've got a large footprint and lots of numbers inside of that, if a customer comes to us and they have needs that aren't met by sort of what's off the shelf in our inventory, our customer success team works regularly with customers to meet special needs and requests inside of that space. So big inventory, great. If we can't sort of fulfill a need inside of there, we've got real live caring people behind it that can help get what needs to be gotten.
Got it. Yeah, I was just talking with Katie too, and we bring this up a lot that, I've actually done entire case studies from companies who decided to come to work with us at Commio because they sometimes took 2 or 3 months to try to be able to get a new toll-free number and get it actually working. And
Yeah.
that's foreign to us because, not only we a REST as you said, with Somos for toll-free, we have those numbers. You get that number, what, in minutes, it's active,
Uh,
I mean,
so our
it's,
toll-free inventory, yeah, if you activate a number inside of that, it's, I'd say, sub-minutes.
yeah.
It's, takes seconds, and it's live and active to go from there. Now, again, if you need a particular sort of number that's not located inside of our inventory, it's Katie's team is there to sort of help you through that process, because we are a
Right.
REST board. You can go get other toll-free numbers that are sort of out there available, but not necessarily in our inventory.
Yeah. I think long story short is if you're encountering any sort of resistance or challenge in getting the numbers that you need to work with somebody like Commio who has direct access to the sources for all of these numbers and they can get them activated for you in a matter of minutes. So that's important, an important consideration. And what else should people be thinking about when they're, setting up their telecom, their voice side of the business or their solution, I should say, when they're looking for a provider? What kind of things should they be looking at when they're making that decision?
Yeah, you keyed on one of the items, and that is direct access to numbers. There's just really no substitute for that capability, especially if you have a footprint as large as Commio does. Um, so that's important, because that allows us to meet some of these special cases that if we didn't have direct access to numbers, that we wouldn't be able to help with. Um, the other thing inside of a provider itself is, and one thing that we are certainly proud of is we've built redundancy inside of local telephone numbers that isn't widely, if anywhere, found across the industry itself. So what does that redundancy mean inside of there? Well, toll-free was built with the concept of redundancy kind of built into it. You can set up different underlying providers for toll-free to be able to handle that redundancy. Local wasn't, so it's sort of 10-digit local calling like you would normally be used to. So we took that model, and because we're a VLEC, we're able to actually make direct tandem interconnections to multiple providers.
Mhm.
So how is that different than, say, like an AT&T? You can go to AT&T and get your numbers. Well, if AT&T is having a bad day, AT&T has to deal with their network. They don't have another network they can deal with. For us, if we're connected to AT&T at a tandem level, if they're having a bad day, we just swing it on over to Lumen or Quest, or move those things. And those transitions happen in seconds. So that's certainly one thing I would keep my eye open for, is the redundancy factor. In addition to tandem redundancy, we also maintain a SOA redundancy, and SOA is the ability to do ports. So we have multiple connections into the LMP, the local LMP database, that if one of them is having a bad day, we can still perform ports for customers until that all resolves itself. So I'd say redundancy, especially inside of the local side of the world, it is a big differentiator for us. And I think a lot of people don't know that it's even capable or available.
Right.
So
That's right.
So something, and then, inventory and all the other things that we talked about, like those are things that you should be looking at when you're, picking a provider. And just remember, it's just make sure your provider understands that, if it is just one number, it's your one number.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of large providers that I see that lose sight of that, and they will describe a problem as, oh, it's just one number. Yeah, well. If
Right.
it's your number, it matters. So
that's right. Well said, Sam. I think if we can encapsulate it, it's, if you're in this space and you're in the market for, making sure that you can sleep better at night, run your business better, have as much uptime as possible, and control and transparency, and access to 100% US based support, Katie and her team, we really would love for you to check out Commio. I mean, we really do check every single box and then some. And you already alluded to the inbound redundancy piece that nobody else can offer. Truly, the level of control that people in this industry, or sorry, people who shop for this product, may not even know exists. And we'd love to even just talk to you. We're not going to give you the hard sell, but if we're a good fit with people, it's kind of amazing how those relationships grow over time, just because we do check all those boxes that they may not even know are available. So,
yeah.
Sam, I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking a couple minutes to chat with us today and bringing us up to speed on voice and numbers. And really appreciate all the hard work you put in for us here at Commio. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and good luck. Talk to you guys later.
Well, we all know that voice is such an integral part of the applications and the services that we provide, which is why it's so important to have a really excellent support team behind you, especially if you've, entrusted a vendor like Commio with your voice communications, which is why I had to bring Katie back in. Katie, good afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So, Katie, we talked a little bit about the future of voice in the last couple of conversations, but I'm more interested in today. So, I think most people are familiar with voice over IP. If you're really technical, you probably know what SIP trunking is, which is kind of how we get our services connected to our customers. But invariably, Eric, our VP of sales, loves to say that all carriers aren't great everywhere all the time, which means that even though we provide access to 40 different high quality carriers out there, and our services are redundant and, all those good things, occasionally our customers do come up against issues. But I'm curious, what are some of the most common issues that people are having with voice out there, the way that we deliver it?
Yeah, I mean, you have your common issues where it's maybe just not the best audio, which could be anything from kind of, static or garbled audio or kind of in and out. Then you have things like, a delay, or you're having issues connecting to certain phone numbers altogether.
Right.
And these are pretty common, across the industry. It more so varies on our end because we have so many different carriers and such visibility, that there's a little bit more to look into. But in turn, we have better options when it comes to fixing those issues.
Yeah. So let's say you are having post-dial delay or static. Like, what were the different steps that you guys would take to help remediate that or get around it?
Yeah, so one thing that's really cool is the customer can go look in the portal. They can use diagnostics and see which carrier it went across. we by no means require you as a customer to do that, but you can certainly go in there and check it before you even mention anything to us. Definitely always open up a ticket. What our teams are going to do on our end is pull that call. We're going to look at the SIP trace, see which carrier it went to, or did it try multiple carriers, and from there, there's sometimes things within the SIP trace where we may be able to offer a solution without even having to talk to a carrier. It could be, maybe you need to make an adjustment to your invite, or you're not sending a proper codec, things like that, that we'll try our best to make sure everything looks good with your invite just to prevent even future issues. But then, of course, we can open up carrier tickets. While we do that, and kind of what sets us apart is we're going to first off let you know who we're opening that ticket with. And we're going to offer a route block solution so that you can immediately try a different carrier instead of having to wait, say, 24 hours for us to hear back.
Yeah, that's so important. And I don't think people realize that some of these tools even exist. So,
Right.
so many of our prospects come in and they're used to, well, we only had one carrier en route. And when there's a problem, we have to wait 24, 48 hours. They never tell us how they remediated it. And suddenly
Yeah.
everything starts working again. But in the meantime, with Commio, you can go in and, as you said, place a route block, say, hey, that specific carrier that's having issues today, just pick him out a route for 24,
Yeah.
48, 72. You can set that timer. And then, of course, turn them back on if you so choose. I know we have a couple customers that sign in multiple times a day because they're trying to deliver calls into very, say, rural areas here in the
Yeah.
US. And those guys, tend to have more issues than the big guys. Well, sometimes even the big guys do. New York City with
Right.
Verizon, we've had not calling out Verizon in particular, but hey, when you're one of the only shops in town, or one of the only carriers, I should say, not shops, um, you might have a bad day. You might have a fiber cut. That stuff happens.
Right.
But there are other carriers that have their tentacles in New York, and if you can just take Verizon out and go, yeah, those are really good things. And I will say too, that on the inbound side, there's something else that we can do that I don't think many people realize is built in that we do offer, which is this idea of inbound redundancy. So I think people outbound are totally familiar with, oh, I'm
Right.
delivering my calls, like I could do route blocks. But on the inbound side, we're, I think, the only provider out there that has multiple vendors in multiple markets where, you mentioned earlier, like if you can't get calls to your number, right, that's inbound.
Right.
We can actually switch you to a different vendor within your local area and the calls will start coming back in. And I think there are hopefully a lot of people on this call who are contact center folks who could be like, wait a minute, you're telling me if we have trouble with on the inbound side, we can fix that too, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, people aren't used to it. And, sometimes we tell that to customers and they don't believe us until they
Yeah.
see it, which is
Right.
totally fair. But, I've seen it in action, and it works. And it fixes some of those issues that otherwise you'd be stuck with for, days even.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's something I know we need to do a better job of productizing that and getting the word out, but it is something that I think it's more than 80% of our network is redundant on the inbound side now. So Commio's really, you're not supposed to sell on these webinars. I'm going to sell you. Commio's the only provider that provides you with tools from dial to delivery, right? From inbound to outbound. Every single piece of it is visible, transparent. By the way, we can probably save you some significant dollars, but
Yeah.
giving you this peace of mind, like I've written all over the website, and people laugh like, Tim, why do you keep putting peace of mind and stuff on the website? I'm like, because you're supposed to sell outcomes. Like I want our guys to
Right.
sleep better. I want them to save money so their boss loves them. And then I want them to sleep better so that their whole tech team doesn't have to be monitoring stuff. And when there is a problem, they can solve it on their own. So
Exactly.
yeah,
And I mean, we mentioned kind of common problems and ways to fix it and the tools we offer, but, in the bigger picture, we are constantly working with our carriers. We do have 40 plus carriers, but we are
right.
monitoring each and every one of those. So, turn on all the carriers. No one in that mix is a bad carrier. And if we ever have someone that's not performing, we'll dig into that with them. And if needed, we'll take them out of route. So, I know a lot of times when I'm talking to interop new customers, they get a little worried opening up that many vendors, especially ones that maybe they're just not familiar with. But we truly are monitoring these guys, working with them closely, making sure that they're all up to a good standard. So nobody in that mix is going to be, a low tier carrier.
Yeah. And Katie, last but not least here, like walk us through, what prospects should have in mind when they're choosing a vendor like Commio, right? Like, and from a sport sort of, side of things, what kind of things should they be looking for in a provider to, do all the things that we talked about?
Yeah. So, a couple things come to mind. One is the responsiveness of the support team. Can you get a hold of somebody? If you call them, will they pick up the phone? If you put a ticket in, is it going to be 48 hours before you hear back? Which with Commio, we do answer the phone. We have a US based support team.
Yep.
We work tickets. We have coverage for after hours, holidays, weekends. We are constantly available and make ourselves available, and not only just from a support standpoint. When you come on as a customer, you have an entire account team, from customer success to account management, including those more technical support people. So we're here to make sure that you have all the resources that you need to fix things. And, if it is a situation where you feel comfortable, you do have visibility and tools in the portal that you would not have with another carrier. So you could go in, look up a call, look at the SIP trace, identify which carrier it was, put a block in, all of that without even having to contact us. Now, we want you to contact us. We want to know about those problems, but those tools are amazing, especially if you want to get in there and do a really quick fix.
Yeah. Well, all good points. I think, unfortunately, our industry is not known for providing the best service. And I think people take it on faith that if they go with a new vendor that they're going to be better. And I just
Right.
love that we basically built this. I mean, this whole business, Commio, before many of you out there knew us as Think. And, Think was started by two folks who were in the telecom industry, and they saw from the other side some of the pitfalls of how some of the biggest folks out there were not providing service, and they wanted to do something different. And that's why our platform and our APIs and our tools and you and your team were built from the ground up to give people transparency, visibility, control, and just provide a better service, and also make sure that 100% US based support that actually responds. I think people want to, I feel like I need to pinch myself when I say that out loud, because all you do is
Right.
see stories on all these websites. People are so mad at their vendors because we were down for 6 days, we lost
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands. Like, wait a minute, we could have solved that problem in 5 minutes. And well, by the way, and we say this all the time, Katie, I still have to say this. Like, by the way, if there's anybody out there watching who thinks it's hard to get a toll-free number or a domestic number and get it set up in less than 15 minutes tops, you need to talk to us.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, people wait. We had we had a prospect come on and say it took them over 2 months to get a new toll-free number. Like, are you kidding, guys? Hey, we used to say there's a better way. Well, now we're Commio. It's even better. We've got more tools. And by the way, what do we have now? 10 million numbers in our inventory.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
what do you guys need? We got them.
Right.
And hey, by the way, if we don't have them, we can order them. You need 100, you need 1,000. Yeah, anyway. Okay. I can tell that Sherry's going to be mad at me for overselling. Sorry, she's our content person. She's like, Tim, stop selling. I'm going to stop. These are all facts. We'd love to have a conversation.
Yep.
Yeah. So Katie, hey, thanks again for taking time out of your busy day. We all know support is really important. We're glad that we're one of the good guys out there doing it. We're doing all of the right things,
Right.
and we thank you for your hard work and your team's efforts. So, with
Of
that,
course.
everybody continue to enjoy your summer, and thanks for all you do, Katie, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you, so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.